Hello, everyone. Welcome to my channel. So, whether you're listening to this on my podcast or on my YouTube, I welcome you to this new episode or YouTube video. Um, as you can tell, my current style of doing video is very casual. I'm not even filming with a camera or anything. I'm just using my Zoom call because that's how I like just do calls with my clients. I'm like, I'm comfortable with this, but I am planning to, upgrade my equipment at some point. So that's kind of in the plan. But today I have been planning this topic and this conversation for a while. It's been something that's just in my heart, something that I've observed in my life, something that I feel very deeply called to share. And I wanted to share this with you. So today's conversation is about learning to have awareness and acceptance of our emotions. And so this is where I want to begin this conversation. First and foremost, when I was younger, I think this is especially before meditation and all of that, I would just react to emotions. And I think that's what a lot of us, that's what we do, right? If we experience anger, we act angrily. If we experience sadness, we behave, or our body, our facial expression, the way that we behave, it just shows up as sadness. If we are happy, then we show and express as happiness. So for me, what I started to really observe, and obviously those are kind of, for example, like the positive emotions, happiness, joy, excitement, those are very easy for us to quote unquote be consumed by or get lost in without having bad consequences, really. Because essentially, we all strive for those emotions, right? At some deep core level, we want pleasure, we want pleasantness. So when we experience either external circumstances or internal activations that allows us to feel those positive emotional experiences, we just go, wow, that's great. I'm doing great, right? Your brain literally goes, that's amazing. Keep that up. But when you experience negative emotions, when you experience things that are just like icky and scary and intense and unpleasant and what you could consider bad emotions or negative emotions, those are the things that we then shy away from. We avoid them. We just go, oh, like, I don't want to go there. Or we try somehow to suppress it or pretend that it's not there or ignore it or do something to not have to face those negative emotions. Have you ever had that experience? Right? Can you think of something? I surely can think of a lot of things. And how this came up for me a lot of the times is my fear of being online and showing up and creating content. For all of my life, like probably since I was a teenager, I knew that I wanted to be on the camera. I knew that I wanted to just like share and talk and teach and speak and just, I don't know, do this thing that I'm doing right now. But for the longest time, that fear of showing up and doing the thing just scared the shit out of me. Like I could not, for the freaking sake of my life, to do it. No matter how much I convinced myself that it was easy, that I could do it, that maybe I just give it a shot, it was so hard. On a bodily level, I'm like, I want to avoid that at all costs, even though my heart and my soul knew that I wanted to do it. And so fast forward to now where I am, I started, actually, before we go to here, before I started this journey of putting my content out there, not just personal content, but sharing things that I've learned, sharing things that I've reflected on, sharing wisdom that I've collected in my life. I 2 years ago, when I started doing this, I was really, really afraid. I probably tremble at every piece of content that I put out, and so many of them felt so difficult and inauthentic for me. It was just like, oh, but like that's not all of me. I'm putting out this one content, but that's not all of me. Like the way that I said that thing, that's not how I would say it. I mean, I could say it in a million other ways. That's not the only way that I would say it. So, how can I express myself through one piece of content? I cannot express myself through one piece of content, and neither can you. So, this is where it's led me to here, which is that when it comes to content creation, all of the content that you ever create in your entire lifetime reflects that one moment of you. It doesn't capture all of your essence, and it just can't. But what it can do is it can capture that one aspect, that one essence of yourself that you are experiencing in that moment. And so, what I've come to accept when it comes to my content creation is that I'm going to evolve. Yesterday is going to look different from today, and today is going to look different from tomorrow. For God's sake, today, like in this moment, it's going to be different than an hour from now, than 2 hours from now, than 3 hours from now when I'm like kind of sleepy and tired. Like, I'm not going to show up in the same way. So, so, for example, if you are experiencing a very negative emotion, such as fear, and how this relates to content, right? Content was one of the ways that I just observed this fear inside of myself. At some point, I had to tell myself, this whole fear with content creation, it's not going away. It's been there since I was a kid, even though I wanted so badly to create content, but it's been there. And even though, you know what, the more that I try to avoid it, the harder that it gets. So no matter what I do, the fear is there. So it's just whether I choose to go for it or not, whether I choose to lean into the fear or not. And so that was this whole essence of how this teaching came to me, is that fear exists. It's what you do with it. Fear exists. You cannot tell it to go away. You cannot just ignore that it's there. Fear exists because we are human. That's what this body was created, how it was built for survival. Fear exists because it's just a part of being human. But the other part is, what do I choose to do with the fears? What do I choose to do with what I'm given? If energy cannot be created or destroyed, but it can be transformed in different states and elements, then what do I choose? How do I choose to transform the fear? Because what I can do is to accept that fear exists and transform it into something that would benefit me. So this is amazing because for me, I learned this and I observed this through my journey with content creation. But it doesn't have to be content creation for you. It can be anything. It can be just think about the thing that you're most afraid of in life and think about how much time and energy have you done to avoid going there, to avoid doing that thing, or to avoid approaching that subject or whatever that is. Just think about how much time and energy you consciously and unconsciously put in avoiding the thing or suppressing or ignoring. It doesn't go away. Like, if you really think about it, those things, they don't go away. No matter what you do, they don't go away. But when you lean into them, when you actually go, I want to walk with open fears. I want to start walking with my own fears. I want to start embracing my fears. I want to accept the fact that my fears will always exist in me, but it's what I choose to do with it. That's when everything changes. That's when everything goes, oh my God, okay, well, I guess fears is normal. And like, it's okay to have fear, and I can still do what I want to do, and fear can exist while I'm existing. And I don't have to have fear to go away for me to do something that I want to do. Because I think as long as we think that fear has to go away for us to do something that we really want to do, then we have missed the whole point. The whole point that fear is there is because desire is there. It's sort of two sides of the same coin. When you have a really big desire for something, you also have a really big fear about that thing. So for example, like Say you have a really big desire to go meet that person that you find so attractive, but then you have this major fear that you're going to be rejected. If that person, you didn't find them attractive at all, you don't even have that sense of rejection. But because the desire is so big, the fear is also as equally big. And it's the same thing for our life purpose, I believe, is if you have something that you're like dying to do, you're like, oh, I just really want to do that. I want to be an artist. I want to paint. I want to sing. I want to just make YouTube content like me. Or I just want to like do something like that I just really want to do, but I'm so afraid. I'm so afraid of putting my art out there. I'm so afraid of putting my inner self out there because that's way too vulnerable. Like, will people reject or accept me? That's just way too much. So that's just what I've observed, and that's what I observe in like so many of my clients is whenever there is massive desire for something, on the other side there's just massive fear around it. And it's almost like a balance scale where the greater the desire, the greater the fear, and it doesn't really go away. Like, unfortunately, it just doesn't. And so when I practice in my Vipassana meditation training, what they teach us to observe is you're not trying to get rid of the negativity. You're not trying to get rid of the unpleasant or the difficult things. What you're learning to do is you're learning to be aware of what you're experiencing and accepting them as equally as you would accepting pleasant and joyful and positive experiences. So if an emotion comes in and it's joyful, you learn to say, okay, that's pleasant. If sadness comes through, then you also learn to say, well, that's unpleasant. And both of them you take in and you don't go, well, I want the pleasant one and I don't want the unpleasant one. You learn to take them both in and just observe and to be detached and to just experience and observe them. You're not clinging on to one or you're not trying to get rid of the other, because the state of suffering is when you're trying to cling on to the one state, like clinging on to mostly pleasant experiences. But then there are also parts of us, right? The habitual brain patterns where we're trying to cling on to the negative as well. So most of us at a conscious level, we're clinging on to the pleasant experiences. We want happiness, we want joy, we want all those things. Some of us are addicted to the negative. So pain, suffering, depression, anxiety, like some of us, that's just the habits that we are built, like we, how do you say, like it's just the habits that you have so long allowed to happen without transforming them. And so they kind of just became your neural pathways, your just habitual energy. Um, but when it comes to meditation, you learn to not cling on to the pleasant, and you also learn to not reject the unpleasant. You learn to be in this neutral state where you allow everything to come, both positive and negative, and you just allow it to come to your field of awareness and you allow it to just be. And so that's essentially what this is about, is whether you're observing a positive or whether you're observing a negative experience, the training is to have the awareness to name it out loud. So if you're experiencing joy, you would say that's joy. If you're experiencing fear, you would say that's fear. And once you name something, you then take it into your field of awareness and you learn to accept it. You learn to see that that's just a part of being human. You cannot pick and choose the emotions. Like, they all exist. They all exist within you in different time, in different circumstances. They all exist. But it's the power of what you choose to do with those emotions. It's what you choose to do as the magician to transforming those. So for some people, let's say sadness comes in and they don't yet know how to have the power to transform sadness into a different emotion, then sadness stays. And if sadness stays for too long, then it becomes not just an emotion or a feeling, but then it becomes a mood. It becomes something that's more consistent and lingering. But if you learn how to transform sadness into something like from sadness to awareness or sadness to a sense of compassion for having the sadness, like saying, well, sadness is there and I'm there for myself. I'm there for my sadness. Essentially, what you're doing is you're transforming, you're holding sadness with compassion. And that energy of compassion itself is already transforming sadness into love and acceptance and awareness and mindfulness. And so the power to transform is really through mindfulness, is through compassionate awareness of saying, this is fear, this is sadness. They are there, they exist within me. They are not me, they are not the entirety of who I am, but they exist as a part of me as a human being. And so my power is I have the capability to learn how to transform every single one of those into either number one, awareness, number two, inner peace. Because through awareness, you learn to have acceptance and compassion for whatever it is that you're experiencing. And then, my mail. And then through that, you cultivate compassion and inner peace. That is the self acceptance and that is the self love. And so I thought this is amazing. Through my experience with content creation, that's how I have found how fear shows up for me, how I have handled fears in the past, and how I'm handling fears differently now. Truthfully, the fear is still there, but it's the fact that I'm handling it differently now. It doesn't feel as scary and as intimidating. In the past, I would have looked at the fear as like, oh my God, it's way too much. It's scary. I'm running away. I'm doing whatever it is. You call it self-sabotage, but it's actually your inner self trying to protect you from feeling the negative emotions, right? So for example, if you associate the fear of showing up as people are going to reject you or not accept you, then your self-sabotage, which is not really sabotaging, but it's protecting you, it's really trying to protect you from exposing yourself to whatever that could be potentially out there. So that's why it's called self-sabotage, because you're really trying to protect yourself. But then in doing so, you're also preventing yourself from going for the things that like you really, really want. So that's how I've observed this for myself in the past is like I would the fear would exist and then I would just say, well, I'm not doing that. Like I don't care if I want to do that, I'm just not going to go there, I'm not going to do that, that's too scary, right? So it was like the fear was there and I'm just not even looking at it in the eye, I just walk away, I'm avoiding it, I'm just like I'm out. And I would see that I would just ignore this for so long. It's like if I could look back, okay, it would have been 10 years, like a whole decade of like not doing the things that I really, 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 really want to do. Like that's a whole fucking lot of time. So I don't even know how this came up, but eventually I came up to my coach one day and I was like, you know what? I want to learn how to walk with open fears. She was like, okay, let's do it. She's like, okay, let's do it. And then I told her straight up, I said, listen, I have thought about this for myself. There are two types of fears that I categorize in my life. The first fear is like the real fears. They are the survival fears. So like if I'm going out in the forest and I see a bear, I'm not going to run towards the bear and hug it. Like my fear as a survival mechanism will tell me that is not a safe thing to do. You either walk away slowly or you just leave the bear alone or you just do whatever it is to survive, right, in that circumstance. But the other types of fear, I call them opening fears. And opening fears has to do with that two sides of the same coin of the desire and the fear, where one side of the coin is massive desire and then the other side of the coin is massive fear. So I coined that term for myself, opening fears. It means that those are the types of fears that if I can learn how to lean in, how to walk with them, then I would create more possibilities in my life. That instead of me protecting myself and, like trying to not do the things that I want to do because I'm afraid of something bad would happen, then I just keep myself small. Like I just protect myself and keep myself small. But if I can lean in and just learn to walk with that open fears, then everything, every possibilities could exist. And for God's sake, like my heart would just open up to whatever it is that I desire to do at such a deep level. So I hope that was helpful for you. Again, I would encourage you to reflect, use this and reflect on your own piece of fear. It doesn't have to be content creation, but it can just be anything really. It can be like finance, it can be something to do with your career or your family or whatever parts of your life that you feel called to look at. And yeah, like really just take a look and ask yourself, you know what? Like, if I have the power to transform everything, how would I transform them? And if I have the ability to like walk with fears, to lean into the fears, how would my life be different? Those are the questions I ask myself every single day now. And it makes such a big difference in my life. Like now I feel so much more comfortable making content than I ever did in the past. And it's not because the fear is not there anymore. It's just that I'm like, oh, this is opening fears. I can learn to lean into it.